Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Jimmy Butler back on the court. Duncan Robinson in between the circles. Looking for Bam in the high post right. He's got it. Facing up on Jaylen Brown. Spins past him. Put Jaylen Brown on his rear end and slams it home.
Jokic for three straight away. Got it. And here he comes. Jokic now has hit back-to-back shots. The lead back to 10.
Guy that big has such a soft touch. Excellent passer. Nothing he can't do with the ball.
And check second. Kitts comes home. And Mookie swings. It's a drive to left field and deep. This ball headed back to the wall. Donovan there. He leaps. It's gone into the bullpen. A 2-out, 3-run home run for Mookie Betts.
That's with 2 on, and it's Suero. He hits that ball high in the air to left field. Backing up, looking up, and it's into the Dodgers bullpen. Big fly, Paul DeYoung.
Sinstock already committed to Nebraska. He, too, is just a sophomore. He'll play for Will Bolt, hitting .322 on the year in his sophomore season. Couple of homers, laces that into left field. Being waved around is Vasco. He's going to come home to try to score. Here comes the throw. And he's out at the plate. Gunned down by Nixon, Snyder, and left. And Vasco is out at the plate.
Bennett in the right circle, out in front, Reinhardt, backdoor, they score! And it's Matthew Tkachuk, the overtime winner! And the Panthers take game 2! They lead 2-0.
Played ahead by McNabb. Stone across the line, has Theodore.
Theodore shot, rebound, goal! Vegas wins in overtime!
We can't take these opportunities for granted. It doesn't come every year. Even last year didn't make playoffs, right? So it's an opportunity that we want to grab and make sure we're ready every game.
Another week. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Good morning to all of you out there, wherever you find us, whether you are watching on the stream via YouTube or live on Twitter. We are also on ESPN Radio here in town and live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, happy to be back for another week. Good morning, DB.
What up? How are things?
Well, things are jam-packed.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So a lot going on.
A lot went on this weekend. I mean, you were out in Des Moines catching games and watching games.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I was sitting in front of my television yesterday thinking, how in the heck is Dallas still okay right now?
Ottinger.
Right.
He kept him in it.
Right. But you watch that Dallas team play and you're like, okay, yeah, Suter, what are you doing? Turning over the puck in your own end.
So how about the line change? You don't,
and then the line change in OT.
You don't see that very often.
Like, what
with
are you guys?
The forwards and the numbers, and all of a sudden you're in a 5-on-4. Like they hung Ottinger out to dry.
Well, and then the unlucky bounces throughout the entire game of Haskinen's first shot, took some weird bounce and finds the back of the net, and then every other shot attempt or wasn't even like a play developed by one player. It was, hey, I'm going to put the puck toward the goal. It ricochets oddly. Goalie goes one way. I have a wide open net on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
That's Mark Stone's goal. Same type of deal with Ottinger making a save and then rebound score. I didn't know what to think about last night yesterday afternoon, I guess, when that game was happening. But what I did think about was, I don't know if my field prediction or my Big Five prediction is going to last anymore with how the Hurricanes are playing in overtime.
Yeah, it was a crazy weekend, right? So teams that you thought would seize the opportunity from a momentum standpoint just couldn't. Lakers laid an egg. Mm-hmm. Celtics laid an egg.
Did the Celtics even show up?
You figure home ice may matter. You had boxing where people hyperbole. I think this kind of was a hyperbole kind of weekend, right? Because right after state baseball, we got Instant Classic, one of the best evers. And I was like, yeah, I don't know, right? It was a highly contested game. I don't know if it was super high end.
In regards to Class A?
Well, yeah. But because it wasn't the best game. I thought B was the the best played game.
Maybe the hype of Class A.
No, there's no question, right? 1 versus 2. No, I get it,
Right.
right? But I think small class should have got its due. That was a fantastic game.
You had to send him to.
Yeah,
you
had to.
Like,
no, I get it. And we saw some big boy throws made at the plate all day.
night. Yeah, I'm like, how accurate are these guys?
Like run at your own peril.
Yeah.
Right. So, what was it? I think I tweeted out a total of 4 runs decided in 3 games. Yeah, 3-1, 2-1, 3-2.
Mm-hmm. And that Class C game was really just a fast-paced pitching.
It was a more competitive game than I think people thought, because I think people thought originally Malcolm would just slug their way to.
You're not wrong there.
To victory, right? But
people wrote off Ron Kelly.
So I thought that
away.
was that was a good day. Then you get the news. People are so funny. Like you get the Kayla news with the decommit, and I think the free world was onto it. It's funny how people in the recruiting circles, they'll whisper to one another, "Hey, keep an eye on it." Like if everybody's doing that, then it's not a secret. Do you know what I mean?
Like we're playing telephone.
Like and I don't know. I was joking with Coach. I wasn't actually joking. I was pretty serious with Coach Huffman. I go, at some point when this whole recruiting thing is over, I think I'm just gonna burn the whole thing down. Right? Like there are so many frauds and folks that like to come across as though they pay attention, and I know good and well they don't. So I had to kind of chill a little bit. I'm like, I'm not interested in I'm not interested in sabotaging careers. But some people just need to
show up.
Just be a little more professional.
Okay.
Right? Like I get the hype and what pays the industry, but do the work. You'll be a lot more credible. Couple good guys called that actually know how to that do stay in there. Like I talked to Sip quite a bit. Because at least he doesn't pretend to know, right? So there was that this weekend. Then we had the boxing. You had a horse race that basically flew under the radar. Under the radar.
I think a lot of people forgot about it.
And it was then we were captivated by the PGA. And one of the guys on this show uttered the phrase, be crazy not to take a shot at Koepka in a major, wouldn't it? I think you got to go with Koepka as a pick in a major, don't you? I was like, I don't know. This is the same draft where Scheffler almost wasn't taken.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a lot of weird things that went on.
The same draft, and we said if we don't take him, people are going to look at us sideways.
A lot of weird things went on with PGA. And isn't he something? Because aggregate, and then he makes the late run. He shot
aggregate. He didn't win.
No, I know.
He would have.
He would have won. Yeah,
he would have.
I was thinking about that. Scheffler 65 yesterday was about as quiet a 65 as you're gonna see for a guy that didn't win.
It's because you were looking at 3 players the majority of the afternoon.
Yeah,
it was Koepka, it was Hovland, and then it was Block.
Hey, how about you think Hovland wants the 16 back?
Hovland is like Dr. Almost.
No.
I wouldn't be shocked if that's what his nickname is.
He couldn't even get the putter working and found a way to be within a stroke.
But that's what he always
going
does.
into 16. And I was like, how?
Especially at the majors, Hovland, you'll always see his name in the top 5. But I don't know if we'll ever see him win.
Yeah, it's early. I don't want
he's 26. I get it. He's 25, 26, somewhere around there.
I don't want to go.
Got a lot of time.
Jinxie Smurf on him.
But, oh, man, with the talent that he brings, you would think by now that he would have at least stolen one.
Yeah. And then we close with whatever it was that Boston did last night with.
At what point did you kind of sit back and say, did the Celtics, like, you talk about this at the high school level a lot, like, oh, you're playing down to your competition, or, oh, you didn't come out ready to go. At what point did you say one of those two things last night?
So I think when it was in the 20s, and I think the Heat had just gone on a 6 or 7-0 run to make it 39-27. And I'm like, then I think Duncan Robinson came down and buried a 3 after kind of a scramble from the corner. And I was like, yeah, they just, I immediately thought of Micah. But try hard. They got a bunch of tryhards. And led by Jimmy Butler, they got. My
goodness. Jimmy Butler looks like one of the best basketball players of all time when he's out there, because they quadruple team him and he dishes it off to a guy that was undrafted initially who buries a 3.
Yeah. And it was funny because the whole weekend was culminated by Nebraska baseball. Good on Maryland too for the choice to play yesterday.
Also, I think another team.
So they get the extra day, right?
Right. Also, I think another team that just kind of went under the radar this weekend, Nebraska baseball, because you knew they were in. So how close of attention were you actually paying to them?
And they get a second day, right? Because they get to go Wednesday, and I think they get the afternoon game. It's Wednesday at 2.
Wednesday
right?
2.
Yeah. Yep. So they get Rutgers.
Omaha gets Oral Roberts Wednesday.
Yeah. So there's a lot.
You had regional softball.
Yeah.
The Huskers took one, and they got that one in the 7th, 9-8.
Yeah.
And then went on to, they were so close yesterday.
Yeah, when they made it 2-1 in the 5th, you felt
good because they weren't playing their best softball either.
Felt good.
And so bottom of the inning, and I'm watching the 7th, top of the inning. Nebraska was the home team. Top of the inning, and I'm listening to the color announcer. I don't know who she was because I turned that game on late, but she was being very critical of the zone, almost as if she was fanning over Oklahoma State in that moment.
So the strike zone was an issue in softball. It was an issue. I mean, did you hear on Friday?
Lincoln East and
people were
Millard
not
West.
Happy with the strike
zone.
But
man, was he consistent with that ball in the left-handed batter's box.
Except for the quarter I told you, I was like, look at Lincoln East's hitters. I mean, they were rubbing that chalk of the right-handed
toes.
We're
almost going over the chalk.
They were just trying to make adjustments. You know what I think's a weird pitch for umpires to call? It's not so much the stuff off the plate. It's the return from a couple of years ago of the high strike.
Oh, when they frame it down?
The one that looks like it's about the letters and you think it's high, but if you go back to like the old school strike zone, what was it, armpits to knees?
Yeah.
It's like, that's a strike. Guys that don't throw really, really hard, you don't see them trying to make a living up there. But I think some called high strikes kind of rub people the wrong way too.
Well, I would actually say the other end for me, the one that starts at the shin and gets brought up to the knees. Your arm doesn't naturally go up like your arm naturally goes down.
You're like, you can see that frame job.
Right. So there was a pitch in that game where I literally saw it come in at the shins, and Millard West, your boy, former linebacker in Pee Wee? Is that what you said?
Oh, Kozad.
Kozad?
Hey, listen, he used to bring drama. He was that little stash that he has is so Corey Kozad. Caleb was laughing because he's always been a tough guy. Like he was pretty good in youth football too. And he'd play linebacker, and he was this sawed-off little dude that brought drama. I was like, I used to always mess with his dad. I'm like, man, I'm a big Kozad fan.
You're like, I can play with you.
I just was going through that list because, the Liebentritt thing got me started. I just was going through that list of guys that came up during that stretch out of that organization that turn out to be like really, really
good athletes,
good players. Yeah. It's like,
Where's he going? Southeast?
yeah, I think
CC?
so.
I believe.
Yeah. But Dermer, just a gutty.
Dermer pitched well.
I know. It kind of felt like
really good pitcher.
Kind of felt like he earned better. You know, you make a couple more plays, you're probably not in that situation. But the counterpoint to that is the swing and misses that Mick was. Listen, you get my fanboy with Carter Mick.
It's your boy. He was impressive.
So
doesn't have a lot of velo, but he puts the ball where he wants to.
What's my favorite thing about Carter Mick?
That he doesn't ever show emotion.
My number one favorite thing about him. My man just stays the course. Doesn't matter he's got the cute little curly hair. He looks like a little kid. Man, he competes his ass off. You should see him hoop.
Well, that's what Sauter was saying. I was sitting next to him all game.
It's like he's like the first time they played, he drilled Westside, and
he looks like me, like
and
an absolute twig.
And he's super flexible, and he finishes around the rim, and he hits kind of big shots, and he just kind of shrugs, and he really struggled at state. Like they weren't going to let him. It's either going to be Templemeyer or Mick. Right. It wasn't going to be both again, and his demeanor never changed. Never, ever, ever changes. A couple of balls that they held for strikes, and he's like, I know that's a strike. He didn't get the call. There's no eye roll. There's no shrug. He toes the rubber and he deals again, man. He is
and he was heavily reliant on his curve, and it was hitting that corner.
Yeah.
Or corner, as I should say.
So the one that got yanked foul, and I text you and I go, be careful with sliders late that don't slide, right? Those turn into home run balls. And I felt like, but I said earlier, I go, Lincoln is going to end up winning this game. Like, I just felt like.
Yeah, you said
it was late. And I know you were like, what's he going off of? Probably.
Well, because I thought, okay, Lincoln East, you texted me as they're going to like batters 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And I'm like, these guys haven't done anything all game.
I know.
Versus Millard West had the top of the order coming up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, DB, like I kind of see you,
but
it really just
was
depends.
Weird. I just was going by body language. It really, and I was kind of looking.
Did it look like Millard West swallowed a bug?
It just kind of tight, just a little. And it was like,
they just could never get over the hump with runs.
I know. Yep.
When Mick had the bases loaded, nobody out, bases loaded, and I looked at Sauter and I go, if this is the theme of today, Millard West will
How about when they only
one
pushed
run.
across the run?
But that's what happened in the Elkhorn Norris game too.
Yeah.
Or was it Malcolm and?
No, it was the opener. It was Malcolm
Roncalli.
Yeah.
But I said, you're watching, and people just aren't hitting when they have to. And I said, Mick's only going to give up one run here. I just kind of see it happening. And sure enough, what was it, a sac fly that brought in the runner after Mick got a strikeout? And then
did you like Worthley behind the dish? He's pretty animated. I mean, those both catchers, like, team swag. And he's just a sophomore. I think Worthley's a sophomore. I should have probably. I'm
not sure.
I think so. And yeah, I mean, you were talking about the wear and tear on catchers. Pretty good athlete, right? Hits at the top of the order. Kind of fly. He doesn't fly under the radar in Lincoln, but I think across the state, he kind of does. But man, I'm with you on Dermer. He was. I liked his body language. I like his pitching delivery. Like it catches.
Well, he works quick and
catches my eye. I like the way he works,
and I like the fact that he works quick because he doesn't get out of rhythm.
Yep.
Unless I saw a couple of instances where it's like, okay, batter calls time, he steps off, but he gets right back on the rubber and just starts pumping strikes again.
I like him a ton. It's gonna be good. It's a good get for Iowa.
If you could pitch more than 110, Millard West would have been in a better position because they were dealing with having one really good starter and then having the drawback of, hey, we had to play that extra game.
I wondered if that was going, because I felt like their depth going into the tournament was their advantage.
Because you had to bring in
they
a
had
closer.
They had the most arms.
And you bring in your third baseman who can pump, like very good pitcher. But how long can that guy last, right? Because he's not used to going more than 3 innings.
So when Williams walked and he's on second with 1 out, like you're thinking,
this is it.
And if it wasn't, then because it wasn't going to get any better than that, because he can cause havoc. But how about with the delivery? Somebody told me that he lefty, not Mick, came in after Mick.
Yeah, it's the other starter.
Come on, DB. Hey, he's their stud.
Number 3.
Yeah. Is guaranteed to pick a guy off. And so I think he kept them.
I'm going to look it up.
I was
trying to think of his name the whole time and hoping you came up with it.
And I will too in a second. But all I'm thinking of is when my guy Dan kept telling me, was it Dan? It was one of the Lincoln guys were telling me he's guaranteed to pick a guy off. He's guaranteed to pick a guy off. He's guaranteed to pick
Paul Shortridge.
Shortridge. Thank you.
Well, all I could think of was Troy, and I'm like, no, Troy's 2.
So this is DB special. But I was thinking, I wanted to ask Shane, but I knew he had no idea. I just know that he and I talked about an army or a military movie that had his name in it, and it was Heartbreak Ridge.
Haven't seen it.
No, and I haven't either. He's just talked about it before, about kind of an underappreciated movie. Yeah, because I don't.
It's a good movie.
Yeah, I don't typically like war. And I was thinking Ridge. But yeah,
If you could compare Paul Shortridge to a major league pitcher, who would it be? Like, it doesn't have to be current, but it was a guy that
John Tudor. John Tudor.
Mine was Brett Cecil.
Really?
Yeah. The way that he throws and his arm slot is just like Brett Cecil. And I looked at Sauter and I go, this could do one of 2 things. If it's Brett Cecil of Toronto, Paul Shortridge is going to have a great day. If it's Brett Cecil of St. Louis, not so much.
So you know who used to always get mad at Cecil? The voice in Nebraska women's basketball. And why am I drawing a blank? Coatney.
Matt
would go on the string of fantastic texts or tweets every time Cecil would melt down.
Took the rubber.
Oh my gosh.
He was bad. He had a really good stretch of like 40 innings, and that was it for the Cardinals. But it was after starting off bad, having a good 40 innings, and then just ending his career there bad.
Yeah, so you come back. Well, there's a lot in that first segment. You come back. We got to get into the fact that Nebraska got their quarterback.
Or at least the guy that they wanted in state, which I think is important. Because
this ought to be good.
I'll save it. Yeah, I'll let that marinate a little bit. I'm gonna put the rub on the meat and just kind of let it sit there for about 15 minutes before we put it on the grill.
So I feel like I got a pretty good feel, not just having played against him, know his offense, know his coaches, and talked to a lot of guys on the other end. So I kind of know what they're thinking too.
And I haven't seen him at all. I haven't seen K-Line play at all.
On the playoffs?
Well, poo.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
So, interested to see that. Interested to still watch him.
Oh, yeah.
Because we still got another year under his belt, right?
Yeah.
Pat the seasoning in a little bit more.
It goes.
But I'll take
prep, then Grand Island,
right?
Then that one,
right?
Us.
But I'll take it from probably a more
topical,
widespread angle.
I like
next.
wide. Let's go wide.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes.
Hits that sharply past the diving Peyton Moore.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hits that sharply past the diving Peyton Moore. Here comes Pels rounding third, and he will score. And we are knotted in the state championship game in Class A.
Hey, welcome back. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. David Benning, Andrew Rogers, happy to have you with us. And as we went through the entire first segment, just talking about things on TV this weekend, didn't get too much like analysis, not too much in depth, except for high school baseball. But we didn't even get into track and field, which we can touch on too, because they had another great weekend.
Absolutely. Shane, did I miss the Lincoln East clip?
Yeah, I played it. Do you want me to play it again?
Yeah, we were talking.
I was talking
we were
about
food.
I was talking about grilled cheese and
chicken and waffles.
I mean,
Hits that sharply past the diving Peyton Moore. Here comes Pels rounding third, and he will score. And we are knotted in the state championship game in Class A.
Eric, then you're thinking, uh-oh. Because it didn't seem like it should have been twos.
No.
Did it?
No. It seemed like Lincoln East still had a lot of work to do.
So early on, I was like, this is going to be kind of I could see that, a 4-1, 5-0 type of game, because it was kind of like a slow.
What did I say, 5-4?
Yeah. I felt like, but even with that number, I was like, gosh, that sounds like too many runs for those guys. Remember I said on Friday, I was like,
you said,
I don't know, man. That sounds like a lot of runs for those guys. But it's just, oh man, just a lot of they play good baseball here. Play a lot of good baseball.
Man, I wish it was just a tad bit warmer. If it was a tad bit warmer,
like everybody with the blankets and the hats.
I liked watching the high school seniors
with
wearing cut off sleeves.
Oh, and tank tops.
Oh my goodness,
they're nuts though. Like you'll see them out at
cut off sleeves
at football in October with no shirts on, just painted. It's like, I don't know. At what age was it, or do you
grow up
not bothered by cold though? Because
I was always bothered by cold.
Really?
Always.
It's hard for me to get Micah to wear
horrible
pants. Like
football
kids
player.
they just don't get cold. And we try to will it into folks. That's why you can't wear sleeves and stuff like for high school. And we thought it was going to pay dividends in state, but we practiced outside the whole time, and it never really got cold for the game. It's just a regular November night,
which is a blessing for every fan in the stands.
Well, I've been in some doozies, man. Teens, sleet, probably not as cold, but the worst conditions we didn't play in. It was the first time around for Westside Bellevue West. It was like snow and sleet.
How about the 2019 state final games at Memorial?
Yeah.
Is that what you're referring to? Oh my goodness, it was a blizzard out there.
I was worried about getting there.
I was worried about getting home.
And in the morning, we played prep one year. I think Stick was either a junior or a senior. He had a stud receiver, Zendowski, that was probably, I don't know, seemed like it was about 18, 19 degrees. It was not
warm.
Good. We actually practiced at Creighton's indoor facility a couple of days to get ready for that one. That was the first time that I ever burnt my glove on a kerosene heater. Wasn't anywhere near it. I had some nice black Thinsulates with the grip bottoms.
All of a sudden, you could see your hand.
My fingers were melted together.
Right.
It's like, yeah, a little too close on that one.
So, do you wish? Okay, maybe you're not the right man to ask because you're not a high school football player. But Memorial Stadium
I once pretended
versus
to be.
UNI. Like you have the dome versus the outdoor venue. Because the dome takes away every variable.
I kind of like playing it outside at the high school level. Now, when I get to the Super Bowl and it's professionals, I want warm weather. But I fudge, man. Even with national championship games in college, I want weather to be a factor. Because I just think it matters, man. I just think there's a distinct advantage for teams that can build their rosters to play in a certain region and always get to play in that region. And you play in the Big Ten, you can't be like that. If you want to win.
You deal with November night games.
Yeah, not if you want to win your conference. I mean, Ohio State's really the only team that I think builds that way regardless. Because even Michigan, I was talking to a couple of people close to them. Man, did they like their trenches this year? It's better than a year ago.
Really?
Up front offensively and defensively for Michigan. If that's the case, that's pretty scary. Pretty scary.
Now, is that because Oluwatimi had so much hype?
And you lost Mozzie?
Right, but I'm saying like everybody's like When you thought about the trenches of Michigan, you thought about him.
I think it's their young depth. And remember, they're back-to-back years having guys along that D-line drafted. Remember, it started with the tandem. What's his buckets that's in Detroit?
Hutchinson.
Yeah, and his counterpart that I interviewed, and I forget his name, that blew out his Achilles in his pro workout in the Ravens, or somebody still drafted him. Was it Dallas or the Ravens? I almost said Olajari, but he's from Georgia. Similar vein. Wow, this is not my morning. And that's usually because I'm
normally a name guy.
Yeah, but there's so many things that I want to get to, and I'm like, gosh, do we save Danny for Sam? We
can do Danny as a lead up to Sam even.
Yeah. So hey, you know the funny thing about that? Do you remember the recruiting? The first time we got into kind of a recruiting thing, and I think you asked me, or somebody asked me what I thought about Raiola coming after Shafe's crystal ball.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, this isn't going to be popular. I said, but I'm 60-40, he's out. Right? It was close, but I was 60-40. And then a couple weeks later, Danny commits to Missouri. And we had kind of the explosive recruiting show because I was bothered by people being mad that he
chose elsewhere.
That he picked Missouri. And I was like, well, Nebraska was his job. I'm like, listen, do you remember this? Mm-hmm. I'm like, guys.
Oh, yeah. I'd even say you're giving yourself too little of credit when you went with the crystal ball prediction. That was like months ago.
And I said, guys, Drinkwitz had been here. Missouri had been here a couple of times. Like, they're way ahead. And Nebraska was kind of just getting started. Especially when the staff got here, because they were all in on Dylan. It was just going to be a strange.
It was Dylan Raiola or die.
It was just going to be a strange recruiting cycle. And my guy Lance on Twitter, not Michigan Lance, Balk Dog Lance, DM me. This was months ago. I can't even find his Twitter account. I told you last week, I think he may have got booted. I don't know. But he said, hey, you know why? Where is Nebraska with their quarterback situation? Nobody else is even being listed. Oh, yeah. So this was probably, I'm scrolling way back through this thing, but this was in March, February. I got to go back. I'll do it during break. But I said, don't be surprised. Just because they're not telling you who else they're in on out loud doesn't mean that they don't have any other quarterback options.
And don't think now that they got K-Line that, hey, this is it, because it's not.
No, and I know, and I get it. Amazing Daniels. Some of these guys were like first up, like, hey, this doesn't fit the. We got into like whether it was a plan. He and I didn't. Whether this was a plan B, whether it was plan A, whether they were working it all along, how it doesn't fit the quarterback run game, this, that, and the other. And we'll get into all that, but I think in year one, I talked to Coach Rule about this. I mean, you can ask him on Wednesday, but I said, I think in year one, like you have to see what works. You know how you want to be, but you have to see what works as your roster evolves. And I think for him, matter of fact, I know they're going to start on the defensive side of the ball
and work their way up.
They're going to worry about getting stops. They'll figure out how to manufacture points. He wants the black shirt to return. So they'll figure out the style based on the quarterback right now this year, because they have since there's the QB run game dynamic. But remember, as was told to me, Rattler couldn't run as well either, and they sprinkled it in. So, and I'll get you an interesting.
And you know what? They're athletes.
Listen,
so they can take off if they need to.
I got something great to Damon.
All right,
he was in like.
We'll get to it after the break.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome back. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, our friend on the stream, DB. I keep hearing two different pronunciations for, is it Kaylin or K-Line?
I think it's K-Line, isn't it?
I think it's K-Line, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he said I keep hearing two different pronunciations for K-Line's name.
Should we ask?
We can double check.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I'm sure it's K-Line.
I either say Danny or DK. I never really have gotten into the
murky waters of
the
how to pronounce a last name.
No, but
you're also just an abbreviation guy.
David Ajabo, thank you. Whoever texted me that. Oh, my man, Degenerate Aaron. David Ajabo. That was the other linebacker that played opposite Hutchinson.
Yes.
Yeah. Listen, I'm just getting caught up in my own head.
Well, it's after the weekend. Lots happened. A lot still going on and a lot to get to.
Yes. So I was trying to go back and find that DM conversation. It pulls down. His account doesn't exist anymore. I hope he's okay.
Well, Elon probably put him in a Tesla and sent him off.
No, he's not afraid to go there, and he's been shut down before. So he may be on hiatus,
or we may need to find his new account.
But I was going back to my responses to him. So this conversation started on March 4th, so 2.5 months ago, and he asked me if I felt like he said Nebraska's not recruiting any other quarterbacks, and I asked him. I said, why do you assume they're not recruiting any other quarterbacks? His reply to me was basically nobody's being mentioned. And my response to him as I was looking dead at it at 12:32 on March 4th, because I don't know why we were fresh on that topic, especially over the weekend, but I said, don't let DK be your reference, because just because they're not saying anything doesn't mean it isn't anything, because I think they were still trying to massage both instances, right? You're pushing your chips all in on DR,
as you should,
but you were still seeing what's out there for other quarterbacks. And let's keep in mind, look how quickly Nebraska moved.
Yeah, they pivoted fast,
right? And we had that conversation last week, and I said something to one of the guys on their staff, and I said, that's regardless of what happens with Danny going forward. And neither one of them said a word. They just let me talk. And I'm like, I gave you the impression that I felt like it was still open. This was a week ago, and you guys didn't even bat an eye. And the response to one of the guys on the staff was, at least you know I can keep a secret. I was like, oh, we're out of the tree of trust, man. Like, nah. I said, okay, I see how we're playing this. Like, but you kind of got the sense. And I mean, somebody always tells somebody around here something, and then it inevitably just it gets around, and so he sat on it, and then it went quick. And then my it's funny too, because people know what's gonna happen, but you have to tease it for business, right? And it's like, hey, keep an eye on. Stop doing that. Like, come on. Again, if enough folks are how many times you hear about it at the baseball game?
About DK?
Yeah. Right? That's early on Friday.
Yeah, probably at least 3.
It's like
2 from the same.
Yeah.
119.
119 times. And so we've gotten into this whole system and style and what's Nebraska going to do. And I remember being at a practice with Dom, and we're talking about like a ton of things. And this is how I knew he watched college sport. Like, he's paying attention, right? Because this was their first weekend. So it had to be the 25th, because this was really their first weekend getting a chance to spend time around Coach Rule and Coach Satterfield. And we were talking about running dynamics, and I was talking about Dylan's frame, and because he's kind of a big guy, right? Like, super fit doesn't look like is not the term that I was using. He's just a big-bodied kid. And I was like, I said, so myth, reality. We're just talking about the ability to run and move around in the pocket. And Dom brings up Clemson and South Carolina football. And he goes, yeah, he said it was kind of like with Rattler. He goes, you get in and they're like in Wildcat. Like, why would you take your star quarterback out of the game to run Wildcat? I mean, that was basically his question. But I didn't know if it was, would he be bothered by that if that was Dylan? Is he telling me that Dylan could be good enough as a runner to not have to come out of the game? So I didn't press, because I'm just taking in information, right? I'm not really asking for follow-up, because when we got rolling, I didn't want to mess up the flow. And about 4 or 5 minutes after the conversation about the Wildcat package and what Coach Satterfield likes to do in the red zone, let me know right away he's very well versed in keeping an eye.
He did his homework.
Right. And I was like, I said, so you watch a lot of college football? He's like, you're damn right. And so it kind of gave me the illusion. I was like, he's a lot more interested than maybe people think. Maybe it's not just an uncle thing. Like, he was really using that stretch to get to know the staff and their feel and how they want to use quarterback situationally and things like that, like just wanting to know or have an idea, which interestingly enough,
I don't know.
Just a
him saying that about his kiddo at the high school level before he got to college changed my thought process on how hard I wanted to be on Casey, with him wanting to know exactly how he was going to be used when we got into the obsessed versus committed discussion, right? See, at no point was I bothered by Casey wanting details, right?
Still to this day, I'm not bothered.
It doesn't bother me one bit.
And watching what he did going to FAU and asking for clarity and a bunch of different things, and watching film with their OC for 7 hours.
He's just OCD, and you get to the point where you become obsessed. So I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, because some people are just built like that, right? And we said that real time, and I think that's
Coach Rule's a little bit built like that.
Who are you telling?
You're watching film of DB in your office in the 90s.
Then the other day, it's Troy.
Day after day after day.
It's 2018 Troy, 2019 Colorado. I'm like, what are we doing?
All right, it's great to see everybody. Thank you, guys.
But it's just it's just what football guys like to do. We're like we're not breaking down. We're talking about the dynamics. And a 2018 game, a 2019 game, fitness, conditioning, lifting, emotional maturity he's like, I don't know if he's taking mental notes, but he's like, man, 14-point lead in both games. Just some Rain Man type stuff about how he kind of feels validated about pushing the emotional and mental buttons. Hey, man, one game at a time, one play at a time. You're talking last week with another guy on the staff, and it was just on the stadium, it says day by day. On the stadium outside that field, it says day by day. He said, you think we aren't going to be preaching day by day? He said, it doesn't matter if it's practice, lifting, the classroom, recruiting. You got to go.
Look, if you're Michigan, if you're Ohio State, you can preach season by season.
Yeah. So,
but not a new staff, not a new team, not a lot of new faces, not a program that's been winning. You have to preach the day by day.
And guess what else that spills into? Recruiting. Day by day. Situations arise. Things change. Things become available. People become available. Doesn't mean you aren't always, but you go day by day. Hey, what's today offer me, and how does it fit with my overall grand scheme of things? So I don't think you don't take a guy like DK, right? I know about the running. Fudge, we defense him. I don't want to call him just because every time a guy commits, I'm not going to call their head coach, but he is a good friend, and we do talk a loth of football. So
then we talk a lot of Bellevue West because of Hall and McMorris also being
and I was with Lamar was watching. Isaiah's dad was watching his nephews all weekend, so we spent basically 30 straight hours together. But anyway, with him, and he knows that offense is at their best when his quarterbacks are a running option, right? They allow us as a staff when we're defending them sometimes. If there isn't a run game QB dynamic, we'll play them a certain way. Now, if they run the ball and can hand it off, that's all bets are off. Then they kick our ass like they did in the state championship one year. But they know the dynamics, and I think Coach Satterfield and the staff know the running prowess too, because it's a little better than people think, but it's not quite where I think they want it. So it's up to the staff to find where those two worlds collide.
We'll get into more of this with Sam McKewon next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Here is the sports editor for the Omaha World-Herald, Sam McKewon.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Sam McKewon.
We're gonna throw the ball, and you just stand back there and throw it where you want to go. And that kind of thing.
Sam McKewon.
Are you guys going? Sure.
Now, Sam McKewon.
Top of the hour here on Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Wherever you find us, 590 ESPN Omaha, live on Twitter, live on YouTube. Thank you for joining us. And thank you to Sam McKewon, who always chooses to join us on a Monday. Sam, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, Sam. How are you? How are things?
I'm all right. Glad that when you talk to me next, which will be in 2 weeks, I will not be taking a child to school because school will be out.
Hey, it's the small victory, Sam. Small
He's
victories.
just tired of the drop-off
She
question.
can drive next year, so she's going to be driving.
I've been there. I get it. I get it.
Oh, good. I'm sure that's a great day when you have to do that.
Dude, just battling school lines in general. My middle guy, his is the worst. Like I see, people, stake claim in the neighborhoods, and it makes traveling down the middle of the street crazy. I see people pull up in front of people's driveways. Like, you can't do that. Like, people, they couldn't care less. Like, you're parked in front of their driveway. Like, why? Because it's 17 steps closer. Do you feel like you should do that? Your kid probably needs the steps anyway. Like, let him walk additional. Like, get out of it. Yeah, it's a free for all, Sam. I'm glad you'll be out of that phase.
I am. Yeah, very soon, and then she'll have to wrestle with it. She probably won't enjoy it, but she'll figure it out.
Hey, speaking of figuring it out, we were talking about obviously the recruiting news, slow burn to a quick torrid forest fire with the news on Danny and committing to Nebraska after decommitting from Missouri. How do you think that process played out emotionally for Nebraska's staff first?
I think there was probably a little bit of, the dominoes I think were pretty set up, right? But there's still that last piece of the kid's got to say yes. The kid's got to do it, and so I'm sure it was a relief, but also genuine excitement. I think you could get a commit from some quarterbacks, and it's just a quarterback in the class, and you're glad to have them, and isn't that nice? And then I think you can get that commit and understand, not just because it's an in-state commit, but it's that specific person that you could get a lot of momentum in your recruiting class. And so I'm sure there was a lot of emotions there, probably a lot of, here we go. Now we got a guy in the class that we know is going to come down and say whatever we want him to say. Like, and he will. He'll recruit, and he will be a forward personality in that class. And so I'm sure they were pretty fired up. They needed somebody like that in the class, to be really honest with you. And now they have one. And
that will do peer recruiting.
Oh yeah. And we'll do it and also be able to, say, hey, this is where it's going. And is a good quarterback. Like I think that's something we didn't talk a lot about with Danny. But is good. He's a good player. And so I think that will help to anchor the class, and they might be able to get a few extra recruits as a result.
Sam, not only is it a nice signing when it comes to depth at the position next year, but how important was this signing for Coach Rule and the rest of his staff to flip an in-state recruit, somebody we looked at as a top in-state recruit, so that in turn it can lead to more in-state recruits of this caliber?
I think it'll help. Obviously he's got two teammates that he's going to try to convince to come to Nebraska, and he might be successful in that, although they're going to have to make their own decisions. But they know who they will be throwing them the ball, and that's helpful. The relationship is already built on the field. And so that'll be helpful, I think. I think what I would say is each individual person is a different guy when it comes to Omaha, for sure. And I think it's getting that way in the whole state. Like I think there might be a little, I-80 corridor from Lincoln, Lincoln to maybe, I don't know, Kearney, and then you might be able to get the kids out in Scotts Bluff almost no matter what if you offer them, because Garrett Nelson and all the rest. But most of these kids are going to have to recruit as individual people. So, Danny Kalen's commitment won't necessarily sway them completely. But I also think, there's a really good feeling about, okay, here's the person who's going to be throwing the football to me. Here's the person who is going to sound like a coach when he talks to some of these kids. So it's gonna come off, I think. And again, I'm not trying to knock Garrett McGuire here. If you talk to Danny Kalen and Garrett McGuire, I don't know that you'd find a lot of difference in the way that they talk. Like Danny's a sharp kid, has been doing this a long time, and so he sounds like somebody who kind of has been around it and can say some of the right things. One of the concerns that I had, at some point it became clear Dylan Rill wasn't coming to Nebraska, is if it drags out too long, even if you get a quarterback, that guy's not really going to know a lot about Nebraska unless it was Kalen. They got him, and so now I think it boosts a lot of different things for Matt Rule. It's going to make his first class a better class as a result.
When you're taking a look at, I think it's weird. I was talking with Coach Huffman yesterday, and I said, must be nice to be well liked again, right? Because, right? I mean, and you know how I feel about it, right? It just drives me crazy that people think that he doesn't like Nebraska because of some school choices that his players have made, and I've always argued that his obligation isn't to a state school, which he does love. I mean, he's got Nebraska chairs in his basement.
Oh yeah, he likes Nebraska a lot.
Well, he used to think he was Remington when we were kids, right? Like, I mean, he's a Nebraska guy. But I say all that to say, why sometimes is his offense beneficial for recruiting, and then others times it's a system thing. So this guy is blank, blank, blank. Like, why do you think we lack consistency when it comes to evaluating his players? Does it have mainly to do with whether they come to Nebraska or not? Because it feels like that.
A little bit.
It feels a lot like that. It's annoying.
Yeah. It is. I would agree with you. I think it is. I think it is annoying. I don't think it has a lot to do with him. So there's things about that offense that are translatable. There's some things that, Danny's the quarterback in Nebraska. He's going to do some things at Nebraska that he isn't doing at the Bellevue West, and vice versa. But the offense, they run the ball. They run it when they can run the ball. They run it a lot. They have 2,000-yard rushers. They run the ball so much, kind of thing. So they run the ball. They like to throw to tight ends. They like to throw to inside receivers and outside receivers. Yeah, they're able to stretch the field. What they're really good at, what Bellevue West has always been really good at, is hitting the big play. And there isn't a single team in the state, especially in the metro, that's going to turn down a big play. And if what they're able to do is get guys in their offense who can outrun other people, you're going to throw the ball deep. And it may look like, this is just kind of a spread offense, but reality is it's just a big play, and you're never going to turn those down. And so Kalen's good at, and his predecessors have been too, good at finding open guys. And yeah, they do have great receivers. They do. I mean, let's be honest. They've had them. That goes back, 15 years. But he'll do whatever he can do to win games, and he likes to run the football when he can. I think it's a great offense that they run. I think what I would say is that offense at the collegiate level is, and it's going to happen in the NFL too. You're already seeing the shift in the NFL. Defenses are starting to slow down these spread offenses. They're putting different personnel on the field, and they're tailoring their schemes and their systems to stop some of that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have an athletic advantage,
some people do it at the some people do it at the high school level. Sam, nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
This is true. This is true. Well, yeah, why I think Wisconsin's going to have trouble, unless they really, I think Wisconsin's going to struggle because if they think they're going to go out there in 11 personnel and just throw it around like they did at SMU or North Carolina, they're sorely mistaken. For one thing, SMU and North Carolina have better skill players than Wisconsin does, better receivers.
Not to get too far off topic, Sam, but why do you think? I mean, Longo had 2 1,000-yard rushers. They were top 20 rushing the football in, I think, 19 or 20 in Carolina. Like, you have Malusi, you have Braylon Allen, you got really good tight end, 37's back at fullback. Like, I wouldn't assume they're going to be throwing it around the yard.
I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball the way that they did in the ACC. I got you. Much like and I think Rule's going to figure this out. They're not going to be able to. You take that Baylor offense he had in 2019, and it was very good. They wouldn't have had that success in the Big Ten. They may have been a very good team, but that's an area where, and he and I probably have sharp disagreement on this. The Big Ten's better than the Big 12, even if the Big 12's best team is better than the Big Ten. The Big Ten is better than the Big 12.
I don't know.
TCU wouldn't have gone undefeated in the Big Ten, and Baylor's team that in 2019, which was very good, they wouldn't have had one loss in the Big Ten. Like you can't move the ball on these offenses like that. You're not going to go into Iowa and run it for 212 yards on inside zone all day long. Not going to happen.
Is there a year you felt like the Big 12's best team was better than the Big 10's first team that comes to mind?
Well, I mean, we have to be honest. TCU beat Michigan.
Yeah, but I don't know if they were better, but I get it. The reality. Yep, I absolutely get it.
No, if you're talking about like some other year where I really thought that was absolutely true,
it's hard for me to say that when I know that the season wear and tear matters when those two teams meet each other head to head. Mm-hmm. But I can't disagree with the outcome either.
Right. So here's the thing. If Michigan and TCU, and Brett Bielema once told me this, first thing I did when I joined the World-Herald was go on that Big Ten tour, and I sat down with Brett Bielema and in his office, and he goes, if we play that Rose Bowl 1 week after the end of the season, we beat TCU by 3 or 4 touchdowns. And his implication is there's no way that TCU could have handled us right after the season because they were beat up. And then he's like, but we had to wait 45 days to play him. And then TCU spent 3 quarters running under every single block we had and making plays behind the line of scrimmage. And it wasn't until the 4th quarter when they got tired that we started running the ball. But if you play that game right at the end of the season, they can't handle us. And he's right. So part of what happens is, if you play a team in a 1-game setting, 1.5 months after the end of the season, you're playing a team that's completely healthy. And it's not the same as playing them as part of the grind. So Rule learned that. So will Satterfield. Like, there's not going to be a game in the Big Ten where they drop 70 like they did on Tennessee. It's not going to happen. So, and I think he knows that, right? Like, I think he knows that. I think he's aware of that. But moving the ball in this league is way harder than moving the ball in some other leagues. I think what Wisconsin's going to find out is if they think they're going to run, the 5 running plays that they do at North Carolina or whatever, and they think they're going to get it done, I think they're going to be mistaken. But anyway, back to the Bellevue West thing. I mean, that offense is great. They have superior athletes. And Danny Kaelin is really good in it. Anybody can go watch his highlight film. And of course, it's a highlight film. It's not definitive. But you can go watch him play in that film, and you're going to see some stuff, specifically as it relates to his footwork and his ability to buy himself an extra half second because of the way he moves. Not scrambling around, not running 14 yards backwards, and then evading 7 people, not Tommy Armstrong stuff, but just his ability to buy a half second not only reduces some of the wear and tear on him physically, but it creates space for his receivers. There's little things that he does that are just really he's able to move to his left to throw back to his right, understanding that if he moves to his left and evades one thing, he can throw back to his right and gain, and he's got more margin for error throwing it back into traffic because he's leading the receiver. It's good stuff. Like he's good. Yeah.
You know, I was going to take when we were talking about the league, I had a question that I was brewing up in my mind, but now I'm going to go back to DK because you have me thinking about this. When it comes to appeasing the fan base, when I go back to when I asked you about, you know, getting the in-state guy, when it comes to appeasing the fan base, when you looked at reactions from when he committed to Mizzou to then when he decommitted and then committed to Nebraska, what did you kind of take away from that whole thing? Because it seems like it's quick to turn and then quick to praise.
Yeah, I think when he committed to Missouri, it was on a Monday, maybe. I think there was a muted reaction because most people felt like Nebraska was still going to get Dylan Raiola. That was in that month of time where people were like, it doesn't matter that much. You know, Dylan Raiola's coming to Nebraska. And there was some momentum to that effect. And so I don't think people were too mad at him. I mean, I don't think people are like that anymore as much as they used to be, where it's like, how dare you say no to Nebraska, especially in his context. It's like, well, you can't commit to Nebraska, so how are you going to go there? And so I think people had a general understanding for what he did. You know, I think people were relatively excited on a Saturday. Again, when you commit on a Saturday, and I sometimes will tell recruits this, I'm like, don't commit on a holiday. And if you don't necessarily want to commit, you know, at like 9:48 at night because people aren't paying as much attention. So, you know, like, so he did it Saturday during the day, which is good. Yeah, I think people are excited. I don't know that I think people are jaded enough at this point where they're kind of in a, you know what, just show me what you can do. Because I don't think people trust anything at this point based on what's happened over the last 6 years. They like Matt Rule. They want him to succeed. But I think it's still a show me sort of stage.
Sam, let me ask you this. This is just about as respectful as I can get it. So this is in regards to like Super Six and recruiting, and we talked about receivers and system play. So I want to be fair with my scrutiny, right? Because I mean, I'm not just gonna. Anyway, I say all that to say, at what point, for like, let's say Carter Nelson, do the results matter, right? Where first round playoffs or track, whether he's hurt, not hurt, whatever the situation is that surrounds it when you watch tape, at what point in recruiting do you think results matter?
Well, they matter. Simultaneously, there's an understanding of upside, you know, and an appreciation for that. I think that would be true with Malachi Coleman, for example. Malachi's numbers are not as good as many of the receivers that have signed with Nebraska over the years, and yet I think the expectations for Malachi are higher than many of the receivers.
It's a great. That's a great example.
Xavier Betts had great numbers in high school. This is interesting. Xavier Betts had great numbers in high school, and I think the expectations for Malachi Coleman are higher. And I you know,
it's why I asked the question, Sam. It's become annoying.
Right, and here's the thing. I will say that I think Betts is a more physically talented player than Malachi. I don't mean that as a knock. That's how much I think of Betts. I mean, I think he's about as gifted as it comes. But there was just a kind of cynicism around his recruiting, because of grades or whatever, that like people were just not really sure if he was gonna play. So I think with Malachi it's a little bit different. You know, he's marketed himself well, and he's got a nonprofit. He's got an incredible story. I mean, it's an amazing story, and he's lived every second of that. And we had a great feature in the paper yesterday about him. But yeah, so I think Carter Nelson, I don't know that I would necessarily automatically lump him in that category. But he's an incredible athlete. Everybody knows that. I think there's probably an intersection between those things. There's going to be players in the state of Nebraska that run for 2,310 yards, and they're probably not college running backs. You know, the context in which they play, where they play, the line behind they play, or if they're an 8-man running back. And,
hey, would you take Ben Bramer or Carter Nelson?
Ben Bramer.
Right.
What? I mean, and that's not a knock on Carter.
No, I know. So we got to be able to have these conversations without feeling like we're hurting people's feelings.
Oh yeah.
I don't want to have to apologize for it. I mean, we could have these conversations and not have to say we're sorry.
Right. Again, what I would say about Nelson is he's an elite athlete who has also shown a predisposition to looking around, and at least taking the visits. Whereas Bramer committed to Nebraska, not weeks, but 2 years before he signed with Iowa State, or a year and a half, and so there wasn't time to build up his reputation. But Bramer's a bigger guy. Bramer's a football player. I think Carter Nelson is too, but Carter Nelson's going to have to gain some weight. I mean, I don't think he's quite the finished weight product. Whereas Bramer,
even Bramer's still a little thin. He's going to grow quite a bit.
Right. He was at the track, and he's not as good of a track athlete as Nelson, but he's the biggest guy out there. I mean, he's the tallest guy, and so you're like. And Bramer's got, 13-inch hands. So
listen, he's fast
and a lot of speed.
Really, yeah, he's really good. Like it was a huge, huge loss for Nebraska for him to not come to Nebraska. It's very unfortunate, and I think he'll have a very nice career at Iowa State. It's too bad that he's not coming to Nebraska.
Let me get you out on this because we're friends. I only gave you 40 seconds. How difficult will the Super 6 be for you this year?
Really hard, but it was hard last year too. Yeah, it was hard last year too. It'll be really hard this year. But we've got a lot of great players to choose from, and we will have a great Super 6.
Was it hard last year because of the influx of the portal?
Well, if a guy like Sledge doesn't make it, it's hard.
Yeah, last year it was hard because there were like 10 guys that could have made it. And
right.
We picked 6, and it's going to be the same deal this year. 10 guys can make it. We're picking 6. We're not going to go with 8. We're not going to go with 10. We're going with 6.
Thanks, Sam. We appreciate you.
Appreciate it, Sam.
Take care.
We'll be back.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, don't worry, Jet. We're back. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Hurrdat. You didn't want to wait, which I did. Sometimes that old music does get a little bit loud, a little bit.
Our breaks are
repetitive.
They're so fast, though.
To us, they seem fast, but really, what, Shane? They're 4 minutes. Shane,
depending upon the break, that one was 5. First one's 5.
That was a 5-minute break.
Second 2
didn't seem like it.
Doesn't seem like
didn't
it.
seem like it. DB, you
it
said
goes by pretty quick.
You said something to Sam, Bramer, or Carter, and I'm like, man, if you would ask me that, unfortunately, my answer would come biased because I watched Ben grow up at Pierce. When I say grow up, for 4 years, and I didn't watch him play Pee Wee or anything, but that's just a person I covered. Mark is such a good guy. Did a lot of stuff with him. So
and you've watched a lot of 8-man,
right? And I've watched a lot of 8-man football to know that the 11-man obviously translates better. But when it comes down to everything at the end of the day, you wonder why a lot of 8-man football players go on to play baseball. Well, more times than not, if you're at a small school and you're playing 8-man, you're playing a bunch of sports. You're not just playing football. But they go on to play baseball or go on to run track. Not too often I see a lot of smaller school guys like that go on to play college basketball unless it's at a lower level like NAIA or something of that nature. But it happens. But when it comes to football is like the one sport that I'm like, even if you are the best player on the football field, doesn't always mean that you're going to be the best player when you get to your stop, especially at a Power 5 school. Now, you could go play Division II NAIA football and probably do just fine. But when you're talking about going to Nebraska, a program of that caliber, at some point you start to wonder, like, okay, even though you were the dude in 8-man, could you win the big game? Like, did you do enough to be like an overall team player?
The best 8-man football player I've ever seen, would probably be Rashaan Salam. Right? But, I mean, he's going for like...
Wouldn't think he would have been from an 8-man.
4,000 yards. But, I mean, he was like... And maybe it's position specific, like where you can get yourself the ball. But
a lot of times in 8-man, the best player is just quarterback. That's just it.
And I've just done these broadcasts for the state finals for almost 20 years. Right? So I've seen guys single-handedly kind of do things where you're like, holy smokes, it's just... He's on his 42nd carry or... just willing his team, or right, they'll salt clock, and then he gets the ball lap. You know,
right. Ultimately, what happens in the end?
He makes a play.
You make the play, you win.
Yeah,
right. But if you're not winning,
I think recruiting is so it's, you know, because I remember having all these knockdown dragouts, you know, on air, and so a lot of this is just now coming to fruition, right? I remember arguing about Harrison Phillips. Right. And people would say, oh, well, where are his offers from? You know, and it was like Army and Duke and Harvard and Stanford. Right. Nebraska came in kind of late. And I'm like, this guy is really good. Like, I'm telling you, he can play.
You're like, I know he's going to play 13 seasons in the NFL. I just know it.
Yeah, that part, like, he's on his second contract in the league, and I've got people like comparing offers. So I think what I'm trying to do throughout this whole process, I remember the whole Xavier Watts versus Xavier Betts, and you know, Watts just graduated over the weekend, and somebody in my messages was like, yeah, you know, that's your boy, but you know, how many games did he start? And I'm like, well, take a deep breath, right? Like, you can't argue or you can't rationalize with irrational people. I'm like, he could have come to Nebraska if we would have recruited him the way that I felt like he should have been recruited, or it makes me mad. What you know, thing bothers me, right? Like Keegan Johnson, when he's not coming to Nebraska, was oh man, it's the system. And I remember he couldn't run his junior year, and then he came back his senior year. You know, he spent basically all offseason training. You know, he's always trying to house like every run. Like he was just pissed, right? And it's like, oh man, you know, Keegan Johnson. And then he doesn't come to Nebraska, and it's like, man, it's Huffman's offense, man. It's Huffman's offense. And I'm like, when is it, right? Like, or we would argue about Easton Stick, or you know, I go back and forth with people over, you know, Rezak and Kalen and Ronner and guys, and I'm just like, listen, I'm not gonna bring another kid down to raise another kid up, but right. I do know what I have to defend against, and I do know what we ask our guys to do. So keep in mind, like when I'm talking about whether guys can play or not, like nobody was talking about Cairo Jordan last year from WS. Why? Because he was 5'9", and I think he was probably running 10.8, maybe 10.9. Nobody's talking about Cairo Jordan last year. He was their best receiver, right? Because he wasn't quote unquote recruitable. Jay Ducker. I know I should stop using WS guys, but Jay Ducker, right? Northern Illinois ends up transferring to Memphis. Like, I know what it's like to defend him. I you know what I mean? I know what he's seeing. You watch tape. I know what it's like to have to try to slow some of these guys down. I used to try to explain to people. Now this is different because academically there were going to be some shortcomings. But with Calvin Strong, well, he's not this, he's not that. I'm like, do you know what he is? He's arguably the best football player that I've ever coached. He is in a very
just a well-rounded.
He was unbelievable. He ran for 6,000 yards in Class A, and he was always the best player on the field. But people would tell me what he wasn't. Sometimes I just don't know what people are watching, but then we'll make excuses for other folks when it's beneficial for us to do so. So I think I just want to empower people to just either be objective or be smarter. If you're not, hopefully it's both, but like it's just out of hand.
But if you're not smarter, learn. Like
it's
be a learner.
It's completely out of hand.
Let's go to line 1 and talk to Kurt. Kurt, you're on Coffee and Cream. What's up, Kurt? Kurt.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
What's up?
Not too bad. Hey, I'll preface this with I played 8-man football, and I've been racking my brain to think of a player that played 8-man football at a skill position at Nebraska, and I don't know if produced is the right word or lived up to the hype. I mean, I know we've had fullbacks that could go in and
right,
bash the brains in. And like Legate and those guys.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. But am I missing something? Is there a skill position? I've always believed you're only as good as the competition you play in. I mean, that's a big jump going from 8-man where a kid like Carter can just push literally anybody around to go in and try and do that against, Division I college football players.
So, Kurt, I asked a couple of coaches. One, actually, I don't believe he has an offer from yet. But I heard this question. In your opinion, having played it, with the numbers, do you think they should have gotten out of the first round of the playoffs? Because I didn't, I told him, I said, hey, I didn't watch their season. I know they were a 7 seed, even though they were undefeated, which means maybe the schedule wasn't as
right.
As whatever, right? Because if you're a 7 and you're undefeated, it's based on wild card points, and they didn't get out of the first round. But like, what should we be expecting at that level at 8-man? Like, what should you be able to do to get your team by?
Well, I think it's hard. At his position, he doesn't have control of the game.
He was throwing touchdowns, threw a couple.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so hard to determine. I've always thought in 8-man, you need probably 2 or 3 guys to really get you deep in a playoff run. If you've got one, yeah, you can have a great team, but then you get into the playoffs and it's a different ball.
That's a good point.
Okay.
So, I watched Remsen St. Mary's do the same thing in Iowa. Yep, you needed at least 2-3 guys.
Okay.
You need a couple dudes for the team has to focus on at least 2 or 3 guys. If it's just one focus, totally changes your game plan. So I guess that's where I'm trying to, and I hope this kid does great things wherever he goes. But just coming from that world, I can't think of an 8-man kid at a skill position that is, lived up to it.
No, that's an excellent point. If he was quarterback, a lot different, I think.
Yeah, but even then, we'd probably get into like whether he could read defenses or not. I don't know. Well, I just remember.
He could just remember
Rashawn
right? So much space. Like you could use your legs to get outside, and I'm with it, Kurt. I know what you're saying.
Well, that's Brady.
Now, 6-man, you can get away with one guy.
What about backyard football?
Thanks, Kurt. Oh man, we should have asked him about his Dodgers trip. How did we leave that out?
Oh,
up against it though.
Yeah, Brady Oltman next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome back, Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. All morning I've been drinking my coffee, courtesy of the Beanery. I'll cheers all of you at home. Cheers if you're watching on the stream or via YouTube. But if you're listening to the radio, you can't really hear it, so I'll just cheers my microphone. I don't know if you can hear that little thud. That's for you. I'm enjoying the Beanery. Hopefully you are too. It's the best place to pull up, get the best service, and also get your drink pretty promptly so you can get off and to work. And gosh, does their coffee taste good, or their smoothies. DB likes their smoothies. Not much of a dark drinker, so he will take the what kind of smoothie, like strawberry banana guy?
Apple.
Oh
yeah, it's green too. Don't let it weird you out. It's fantastic.
Don't let it weird. As you see me look at you with a confused face, don't let it weird you out. And their food is very tasty as well. We were talking a lot about Danny Kaline. We were talking a lot about Carter Nelson. So let's bring in Brady Oltmans now to ask him on his review of these guys. B, Rad, Y, good morning.
How we doing, fellas?
I just tried something new there. I don't know. I don't think it will.
We're just moving this thing along, man. Trying to have some real recruiting discussions, man. How are you?
Man, we're kicking. It's a beautiful day out with the dog this morning, so we're going to try to stay out at least on the deck here and do a little bit of riding this afternoon.
I can dig that. Now, we just got done talking about Carter Nelson, and without trying to be overly critical, because we're not taking away his athletic ability, just more like the translation of his game from 8-man to 11. And that's probably the worry for me after watching a lot of 8-man football in the past. Do you find that it will be easy for him, difficult for him, or do you think it just comes with the territory when he gets recruited and say he goes to Nebraska? Will the level of competition translate well?
Well, you're asking the right person. Former 8-man football player myself. I've always been an advocate for, good players, good athleticism. Football's football, regardless of how many people they allow you to have on the field, just based simply by enrollment numbers. I mean, Carter Nelson's athleticism is unreal. I mean, the guy can pole vault a ridiculous amount. He can high jump a ridiculous amount. Ankle injury notwithstanding during the track season. He's incredible. I mean, literally Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee have all offered him and are all welcoming him back this summer. Those teams have all won heavily, especially this last season. I don't think that they offer him and recruit him this hard if they don't think that he can play at the highest levels of football. I mean, he's an incredibly gifted athlete. He's an incredibly driven athlete. I mean, he's the kind of guy who's going to tackle well. Tackling translates to everywhere. And by the way, 8-man football, there's a lot more open field. If you can tackle in the open field, I don't care how many guys you put on that field. I mean, he can make a difference. His size is awesome. He can run block and stick blocks down the field with the best of them. He has great athleticism to catch out in the open field. And he's the kind of guy that after Ainsworth comes back and beats Elgin Pope John, at late in the season in a rival school and stage a second half comeback, he's leading them in prayer circle after the game. So you got a guy who's going to be kind of a high quality of character, good, hardworking, blue collar family. And a guy who, I'm not going to say that the translation between 8-man football and Big Ten football isn't going to be drastic. There's going to probably be some sort of growing pains there, but that's why you've got a coaching staff that relates to young men. That's why you've got administrative staff that helps kind of ease that transition academically and athletically. And, there's also a reason why Notre Dame is probably the other big one that's getting after him. And they have a pretty good history of putting tight ends in the NFL.
When you're talking about kind of the environment not wanting to be the kind of the indicator of the outcome, because that's kind of what I hear, right? Like, you got to kind of remove this or remove that. Just take a look at some of the data. Quarterbacks often sometimes don't get that kind of that benefit of the doubt. I think, are there positions that you look at and you think, okay, if I'm going to get into measurables without a lot and not a lot of the competition, then there's an advantage there versus other positions who can be highly, highly productive. Guys can still be college players, but don't get the love because maybe that situation isn't conducive to magnifying their skill sets either.
I think quarterback might be the one that would jump out at me. I mean, you've got 7-on-7 camps are a lot more prevalent around the country, so you can kind of show out there. I know, like Carter Nelson specifically, there's kind of an open secret of like, are we going to get the offers at Ainsworth? Should we transfer and play football somewhere else? But camps were able to raise his profile and get out there. And then once a couple of schools noticed him, his profile spread like wildfire, and people saw his tape and said that he can play. Quarterback's one of those where if you're probably at a smaller school, there's just always going to be can he do it against competition? Because you just have to read so much. You have to break down defenses and move around. And historically, if you're at a smaller classification or smaller people, you're just not comprehending everything that you would be comprehending at the college level, especially at Power 5, Big Ten college level. So you just got to read everything around. Now, of course, at the same time, defensive backs on the flip side are doing the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're having to read the offense. They're having to read movement, pulling guards, pulling tackles, offensive alignment, spreads, and where the quarterback is reading. So there's a lot of the mental game, I think, is some adjustment there. But then the closer you get to the line, there's not to say that there's no, real adjustment needed there. There is, but you can push, you can shove, you can catch, you can move. that's going to help you make that burst off the line. And then if you're able to do that right away, then you're going to be well ahead, or at least in the leader pack your first year on campus.
Pluck him out of Ainsworth for me and put him on West Side, for example. Like, bring him to another state championship caliber team, an 11-man. Is he as successful and eye-popping, right? Does he pop off the page as much if he is with a big group of people? Or do you look at him and you see who he's playing against and you're like, wow, I mean, that's just a grown man among boys?
I'm a believer in the former. I mean, in the latter, because that it's one of the things why Matt Rule and his coaching staff love the track numbers so much, is because those are transferable. You know what I mean? Like, if you've got a guy that can pole vault 14 feet and can high jump when he's fully healthy, can high jump, up to 6'8". If you can do that and Class C, that height doesn't change, if you're moving up to Class A. If you're able to do that there, you'll be able to do that at a larger field. Now, like, it would certainly be fascinating to see him in his skill set transfer versus like Bell West, Elkhorn South, and any of the metro schools versus, Elgin Pope John. I would be very fascinated to see him up against that sort of competition. But there's a baseline for athleticism there. There's also more coaching, like, Kirk Peterson, Jesse Owen, even his dad, Jake Nelson. Those are really your only hands-on coaches at Ainsworth. Whereas at Westside in the Class A school, you're going to have a lot more one-on-one time with your coach. You're going to have a lot more driven, direct coaching. So it's kind of it's a grab bag every time that you think you have an idea of this might be a detriment, or the smaller school might hinder him in this way. There's also a way of there's a flip side to it of a balancing act, and there are benefits that he got being at a smaller school, standing out athletically, but also if he was at a Class A school, he'd have all the resources to develop a little bit more hands-on that every other, Class A athlete has. So it's a give and take.
Yeah. The one downside, I think, immediately is the wear and tear.
Yeah.
That is something that I think you have to really be able to manage. Brady, let me ask you something. The more you do this, do you feel like there's a position group that you have a pretty good handle on how it correlates to the next level? Because some are really hard to evaluate, in my opinion. Haven't done this a long time. Are there positions like you kind of feel like you have a pretty good handle on?
Oh man, it's a really good question, especially because the Rule coaching staff kind of takes a little bit more of the pure athleticism approach, and they're a little bit more open about moving guys around. I guess the Scott Frost's staff moved guys around too, but one that stands out, I guess, coincidentally enough, is the tight end position. Like Carter Nelson having to play on both sides of the ball. In 8-man, you don't have the numbers luxury, and when you have that sort of athleticism, you've got to, as a coach, have that your best players on the field at all times. That guy is playing hundreds of plays every game. He's a two-way player, and he's a two-way player every single day. And his athleticism at tight end kind of lends him mobility, like you've seen with Rule staff. Like there's a clear through line if you want to move from tight end to defensive line. If you want to step back, potentially play linebacker, the athleticism and components that make a good tight end. You have to be able to run block. You have to be able to push guys around. You have to be able to move out in open space. You've got to be able to have good hands to catch and be dynamic. All of those things work at so many different positions to where, depending on your body type, they could, pull you off the line a little bit, make you work more in kind of a slot, or like a Janarian Bonner situation where you're stepping out and playing a little bit more hybrid fullback versus just being aggressive up at the line. There's a lot of different ways that you could go if you're working at tight end.
Brady, man, good stuff. We appreciate you hopping on.
I got a lot, man.
Pretty good.
We'll talk again next week, man.
Thanks, B.O.
We'll see you.
That's Brady Oltmans, Nebraska Football and Recruiting for Hail Varsity.
The two-way thing, there's a lot we could follow up on. The two-way thing is a big deal. I got into a great debate a week ago about evaluating a guy's take locally that's a two-way player that dovetails off of what Brady said.
Let's get into it next. Stick around. More Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes.
One out, bottom of the 7th. Bases loaded. Dreesen, left side into left.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
One out, bottom of the 7th. Bases loaded. Dreesen, left side into left. Back goes Pels, catches, play at the plate. Here comes Hurst at the plate. He is out. We've got extra innings.
What is going on? What is happening? Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Those two are really good.
Is that what you were saying at home?
Yeah, like
unbelievable. We're going to extras.
They're hilarious.
They were great on the call.
They
were great on the call.
Because
I told you, I went back and watched the Malcolm game, and I just remember them saying like, "Oh, are you going to be here for game 2?" I think Larry had said it, and he's like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to be here the rest of the night." Like, and you could just tell like that was the two personalities of those two.
They had a nice little, just the little,
I think
the little back and forth, and they can give each other a hard time, right? Baseball. It's just I enjoyed it.
I've been waiting 2 hours to play that clip. I wanted to play that clip, play it. Because
You're the producer.
Such a great clip, and I even played it early, so I messed up because I was excited to play it.
It's exciting. Hey, speaking of exciting, man, Hail Varsity Club is hiring, and so this is kind of a personal deal. It's emotional for me because I enjoy being here, and the more good people we have here, the more that I will enjoy coming here. Super motivated. If you're enthusiastic, you can be out front, you can be in the back kitchen. Our general manager working with Nick last week, that was hilarious to watch everybody on both sides pull their end of pull their weight. If you love serving great food, you want to be hospitable. That's always important. You need to be at Hail Varsity Club. It's very difficult to find good people, but good people make it work. So try Hail Varsity Club. It's a fantastic culture, and I think we have some of the best bosses.
18 years old to cook, 16 to be at the hostess desk, and 19 to serve.
Yeah. So go to hailvarsityclub.com/careers. Apply today.
Hey, we had a patio table that my dad brought up and set up.
God, that thing was pretty.
And it was glorious this weekend, and it's going to be glorious all week.
If I was in town, would you have brought Barry by? Would you be mad if Barry and I kind of hung out and we didn't involve you?
Yeah.
Would you?
Well, because I don't get to see my dad every day.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
But if we lived in if he lived here, no.
All
like
right,
you guys could hang out without me.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. Not that I would want to. I just wondered.
Right. Oh, yeah, Andrew. You can go.
Well, like what if you would have said, you could have been like, hey man, you know what? I'm gonna 1, 2, 3 pick up sticks or whatever. 1, 2, buckle my shoe, right? Or whatever.
Yeah,
you could have been doing yard work. And maybe he wanted to go grab a lemonade or something. I was like, oh yeah, man.
That would be fine.
Okay. But we could like make plans and just leave you at the house.
I'd be a little sad.
I don't get to see my dad.
If that's the case, I'd be like, Caleb, get on Fortnite. Here we go.
That table was pretty sweet.
It was. And we enjoyed some Zipline beers on the table. We had dear old Nebraska Brew.
What made you put
He
down?
loved it.
Did he?
We only had one each. He's not much of a, let's power through a case. Whereas I probably could power through a case. But speaking of Zipline, it's their farewell tour. They are closing their OG tap room due to upcoming brewery expansion, which means this week is full of fun events to say goodbye. And today's is Green Label IPA Pint Night. Buy a pint and receive a free pint glass. You have to buy the flagship IPA. And then throughout the rest of the week, they're having events like bingo, trivia, music. So check out Zipline and just give them their support during this final stretch. Do you think this is actually the mic that we think it's going to be on line one? The guy that we talk to every Friday?
He doesn't typically call in.
Should we find out?
Shane, is it? Because you didn't say who it is. It just says Mike Topics.
I don't know. I mean, this guy sounded pretty calm, so I don't think it's that Mike.
Whatever.
I think it is. Let's go to the phone. Mike, good morning. Mike.
Good morning.
Yeah, it is.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Sutter, how's the knee?
It's actually pretty dang good. I'm gonna against my wife and others' wishes. I'm going to attempt to mow the yard.
Why?
In sections, and it might take me a couple hours.
Bro,
But,
don't do that.
Just make sure. And listen, if you want to go for it, go for it. Because structurally, I think you're good. Keep it clean, though. Okay, I got
a wrap up.
You get that thing, and remember, you're going to sweat inside, and it's going to be against the wrap. So don't think you're good just because nothing from the outside is hitting it. The inside stuff matters. So make sure you clean that up when you're done. That's my only advice. Go back and re-clean it.
I put the bandage on. I put some gauze over it. I'm gonna it might take me couple hours. I might have to stop and take a couple little breaks, in between different sections of mowing, or if I get tired or whatever. But I think I'm gonna give it a whirl. And
he said a whirl.
I mean, this is the dude that after 4 days of recovery went to state baseball and covered it for 8 hours.
It was fantastic.
8 hours plus.
They couldn't have asked for a better opening year for C and have it being televised. Like they hit a proverbial home run. Go ahead, Mike. What's on your mind?
It was really good. Anyway, so here's where I was listening to you guys as I was taking my daughter to school and got my car washed because, it's Monday and I like to do it on Mondays. But
oh Lord,
I have a problem. Not a problem. If a kid is good enough when he commits to the school that you cover / root for, whatnot. Danny Kaline, for example, commits to Missouri. It was whatever, no big deal. He's not that good anyway. Okay. But then he flips to Nebraska and it's oh man, he's great. Yeah, he's awesome. He's great. Yep. We're gonna give him a bunch of media attention and all this stuff. But why didn't you do that before? What changed? What changed? A game hasn't been played in that 3 months for you to change your mind.
Now, hang on real quick before I let you go ham. Full disclosure, Andrew, it's not recently. He had the same meltdown over Flores not getting more coverage because he picked Oklahoma State. So we're talking about a guy that's for kids, not for schools.
Right.
Because okay. All right.
Perspective is set.
I just wanted him to have context of why you get upset sometimes over things that don't always appear to make everybody else as mad. Right. Some people look at it from the state, school, local. You look at it from all kids all the time.
Right. Correct. That's just how I guess I go about my job and do my job. And frankly, some people think that I bash Nebraska for it and whatnot, but that's not true. That's not the case. I'd like to see Nebraska do well and win every damn game. I don't care. It makes everybody in a better mood. But at the same time, a kid can still be good. Both sides of the coin. A player can still be a really good quarterback or a really good lineman or a tight end or whatever, even if they don't commit to the school that you /cover or root for or are fanboy of, all of that.
Here we go.
They can't, and two things can be true, right? Am I wrong? Two things can be true. Why does it have to take the commitment of whatever or a flip or whatever it might be to make the kid good again in your eyes? What changed? What changed?
Well, you took it one step further. I just was kind of starting on the Coach Huffman thing, just because, a couple of weeks ago it was I need to talk to my boy. I just posted. I was like, I don't know where this narrative comes from that he doesn't like Nebraska, but then we do a sit down and we talk about his quarterback, and it's like, oh man, Coach Huffman's back to loving on kids in the state. I'm like, he was the same guy 96 hours ago.
Yeah, there's one thing I know about Coach Huffman, and I've become really good friends with him.
That's unfortunate.
He loves Nebraska football. Yeah, tell me about it. I had a 45-minute phone call with him while we were there. He loves Nebraska football. He wants Nebraska football to win. He said that forever. There's no he doesn't want his kids to go to Nebraska. That's the most uneducated conversation I've ever heard. Like, then you don't know. You've never spoken to him then if you think that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
But what he is going to do is help his kids get recruited. He's going to do that. So are everybody else, not everybody, because there are people that should do a better job of it, but there are coaches in the Metro that do a tremendous job of that.
Mm-hmm.
There are some that probably should do better. But like he's 4 kids and he's gonna do what's best for his kids that are in his program. And frankly, it's kind of working. Should they have won more games with the talent they've had? Absolutely. No question. He'll be the first one to tell you that. But they haven't. Who cares? I'm just talking from if we're going to be fans of kids and fans of a team and all of that, then kids are still good if they commit. They can still be good. I look at Xavier Watts. People crush him, obviously, super cool dude, graduated from freaking Notre Dame. Are you kidding me? And if you knew his dad's story and all that stuff, you'd be like, oh my gosh, this dude beat the odds, right? Awesome. So, but that kid, he's going to play this year at Notre Dame.
He's going to start.
He's going to play. Yeah, he's going to play a lot. And we've already had this just narrative about him when his career's not done. He played a ton at the end of the year. He's a great kid. It was X versus Z back when, they were in high school. And I was one that said, hey, I'll take X.
I said the same thing. And as you know, I love both guys. I was closer to Xavier, but I would have taken X, even though, whatever.
Xavier had he was the better athlete, he was the better all that stuff. But I also look hey man, we'll see how their college careers end because they're both not done yet. So maybe I'll be wrong. Great, and if I'm wrong, I'll tell you I'm wrong. I don't care. But it just got me fired up. The Keegan Johnsons of the world. Oh, he doesn't commit to Nebraska. Oh yeah, he's not very good. He sucks. He's terrible. And then he goes to Iowa, has a great freshman year, does really well, and everyone's like, man, why didn't we get this guy? And I'm like, well, you can't have it both ways. 6 months ago or a year ago, you said he was terrible, and now he's not, and you change your mind, but that's just I don't understand that. And yes, it is probably because I'm for kids. I'm for all kids. I want all kids from Nebraska to be successful and do well and find success. And I don't give a damn where they commit to. I could care less. When Danny Kaline committed to Missouri, I was the only local person that actually spoke.
That you were.
And I was the only one.
I know.
So it doesn't matter to me.
I know why that. That right there, I guess I get it. And I'm not trying to give you a platform to be pissed. I'm glad you feel good.
No, that's okay.
That you can use our platform to be pissed. Because I think a lot of it for you is you hate the Johnny-come-latelys because it's advantageous.
Right.
No, I do too.
Right.
I do too. And I'm not going to turn this into a gripe session. Let me ask you something. Because I do feel like you need to get that kind of stuff off your chest. It's healthy when you work like you do. So, because you'd be like that with a kid at Morningside as you would at, Northwest Missouri State.
Right.
We were talking about, Brady said something about two-way guys and kind of getting a gauge on gauging the tight end position. I've had 2 coaches at the Power 5 level ask me about Tyson Terry. And the questions were about kind of what I saw wrestling in the future, this, that, and the other, and his defensive tape versus his offensive tape. And I said to both guys, I said, one thing I think TNT had to learn how to do is play both ways, especially in the trenches, especially in the Metro. Is that fair, or is it just because he and Ryan are my guys? Because I don't feel like I was making excuses. I feel like even if I asked Larry or Coach Martin, I think he'd say he was learning to become a two-way player.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think that's more than fair. He's obviously physically, mature, grown, all that stuff. That's no one's going to doubt that. But I think there's a mental piece of that.
Me too.
Like there were people that were like, oh, he took some plays off and all this stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, played last year was his second year of varsity.
And first playing both ways as a starter.
Right. And he played both ways as a starter. That's on the interior of both lines, and they really needed him. Like, I don't see that being a problem. Now I do, and I think others feel that he will be a really good center or offensive guard at the next level.
Complete.
That's his position.
He's an all-conference caliber center. Could be.
Yeah.
What about
super athletic? Obviously, all that.
So the quarterback thing is interesting, right? I look, and this is full disclosure. I mean, some of our listeners know, some of our listeners don't. Even though Huffman and I are great friends, right? Like, I've spent the last however many years trying to figure out his offense, right? I watch it not as much as he does, but a fair amount, and we've had success in spots. Would you rather be? Do you get the whole system thing versus not system? Because conversely, I look at a guy like Anthony Rizak, and I know our offense. Like, it's hard. It's a lot of verbiage. It's very multiple. There's QB run game. He's got front backside reads, and we're not telling him where to go with the football. Not that other coaches do, right? Most people are like, hey, read the flat defender. Flat defender does this. But, he has a lot of freedom at the line of scrimmage. Ronner's offense is a little different. 2 wide receivers mostly, sometimes obvious passing situations. Circle only gets a lot of 2 receiver concepts. Sometimes it's obvious pass situations. When you look at quarterback play, how do you get away from looking at the system they play in, or do you look at the system they play in?
Nah, I don't really look at it. I don't look at the system as much as just like the physical trait. And a lot of, I will say this, there was something that for his flaws, I guess, the cigar smoking previous quarterback, slow blinker guy, like that kind of always is stuck in my mind. If you can't come off that first read into the second, you got a problem. Or if you have a hitch in your giddy up, like as far as a mental hitch, that was something that I saw. And Frank, I'll be dead honest here. Like Caden Becker, if you remember him, first time watching him just 7-on-7, I thought he was a slow blinker as a quarterback, just because he couldn't like get the ball out quick enough or make the quick decision. So I think there's a little bit of both. Yes, the system is what it is. Bellevue West offense is pretty prolific, and they're going to be pretty dang good again this year, I think.
I keep hearing that.
Clearly, I think. Yeah, I think they should be pretty all right offensively for sure. But we'll find out what that looks like. But I do think that there's something to be said for letting guys just kind of go. And I do think that Danny, for example, here, I do think there's a lot of time where like it's the read and that's the read and you throw it there and doesn't matter what else is happening, you just throw it there. Like, and that's kind of their offense. So, we'll see if he can kind of adjust to that a little bit, but a lot of times it is, hey, he has one read and he makes the throw. So a little bit harder to evaluate that, especially when you have top end guys like he's had or they've had forever, to just run routes that are better than anyone can normally defend, I guess.
Mike, I got
8 out of 10 times.
I got one more quick thing before we let you go, topic wise, because your knowledge of these guys it's turned into Mike Sauter's segment. I feel like this is Friday at 9. Not kidding. But so we were talking a lot about Carter Nelson earlier on too, and not being like overly critical on him, the person, but maybe do the numbers translate to the field? Does what 8-man translate to, 11-man in college? We were kind of getting into that. And then, it was sparking conversation on his track abilities and things. And we had a comment that had said on Nelson, the 3 different types of field events is really rare. And I turned to DB and I said, I was late to the recruiting cycle of last year, but you look at a guy like Jalen Lloyd, who if you put him in 3 different field events, we'll say triple jump, long jump, and then we'll just add the high jump in for, kicks and giggles here. But, he also runs the 100-meter, things like that. So you have a really versatile track athlete. I mean, was he as hyped as Carter Nelson last year? Like, did he get the same love that Nelson's getting? I just kind of want to get a good gauge on numbers reflecting the athlete.
No, he did not. As far as
his seemed to be limited to track. He didn't get the football.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he didn't.
So it's
he did not get
And is that because he plays in Class A 11-man versus if you put him at 8-man?
It's just weird. I don't know, man.
Listen, hey, if Jalen Lloyd was playing 8-man football, he'd be the quarterback, the running back. He'd throw the ball to himself for touchdowns. He'd be able to do all that. Like, he'd be able to do everything.
That is weird because I didn't think of that until you asked me. One gets the numbers used to validate his football prowess. The other does not. The other did not. Right. I think that's safe to say, right?
Right. That's fair. No, yeah, that's 100% fair. And at some point you have to.
But Carter Nelson did have like 50 touchdowns, right?
Yeah, and at some point, as Sauter just said, you have to produce on the football field. Huh. But is it different based on the level of competition? Then it goes back into that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, I think we pick and choose. Right. My buddy said, hey, listen, he gets the axe to grind, but fan is short for fanatic. But you're not necessarily talking about just fans, are you?
No.
Okay. All right.
No.
All right, buddy.
Sauter, hopefully you feel better, and don't get hurt when you're mowing the lawn, please.
I'll text you guys how long it takes me to mow.
I'm sure I'll see pictures of your edge.
I don't think I'm edging today. I think we're just cutting the grass. That's about all we're getting done.
All right, buddy.
All right. Thanks for letting me vent. I appreciate it.
Hey, you can come anytime. Anytime. You know that.
See, and I kind of get it, right? I'm protective of high school football evaluations just because I see them all the time. So I don't want people thinking they know when they really don't. Now we handle it different, right? But he does. I get it.
What is the closest location that Ainsworth travels football every year?
Oh, so you can go see?
Because I don't feel like driving 4 hours in one day and then like staying the night and then driving 4 hours back. But if I have to like make a pit stop in Norfolk, I can.
You want to see, don't you?
I'm going.
Like, you're very curious. I like that to see.
I'm not. It's not a one thing anymore.
I'm going.
It's a going. And if I have to get back at 3 a.m, I have to get back at 3 a.m. Sports cleanup next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Things you wanted to. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Things you wanted us to get to from the weekend, but we didn't.
Cleanup on aisle 6.
It's the Coffee and Cream Sports Cleanup on Hail Varsity Radio.
Getting into a lot of good conversation on today's show. Had me thinking again during the break.
The awkward pause. Oh, Shady took a side. See, I feel like when you're asking me hard questions, you're like, go ahead, man, let it rip. What's on your mind?
So going back to Jalen Lloyd and just like his overall ability from track, like we talk about track to football with Carter. We don't talk about that with Jalen. But then even just like on the football field. We talk a lot about Malachi Coleman and what he can and could be at Nebraska. Number 1 recruit, number 2 recruit in the state. And I hope that he performs because he's got the makeup to do it. But then I think about we talk a lot about, well, I guess we sleep a lot on Jalen Lloyd, numbers wise in football. What could you spit off his numbers? Roughly?
I don't know. He's like, I don't know. I think he's probably 50 catches in the 50s, 700 some yards, 8 touchdowns.
Why is it that we don't even talk about him when we talk about football for the future at Nebraska? I feel like he's just a list buried in a name buried in a paragraph. But if you got the headliner, it would be Malachi Coleman. But then it makes you think about, okay, well, if we're going back to track,
Mm-hmm. Oh, in terms of validating one versus the other?
Right. When you're getting like a full package, a total package of a person, like Jalen Lloyd beat a lot of people, including Malachi Coleman in the 100.
Mm-hmm.
He beat McMorris. He beat Hall. Right? I'm getting my numbers right. What, he in third? Second?
He was second.
Second?
Yeah, behind Gillogy.
Back to Creighton Prep having all those points.
Yeah, I think it was 10-4-3 to 10-4-7. Normally a 10-4-7 should win you the 100.
I mean, if you give Jalen Lloyd 2 inches, is he now the best wide receiver at Nebraska recruit-wise? Like just 2 inches.
So
am I wrong?
So is your frustration is that it's not good for all? You want, what is it? You want consistency? You're wondering why we fall in love with one thing over another?
Kind of both. A combination of the two. Because maybe this fan base wants something to be like, just wants it so bad that they're just going to latch on to one thing and stick to it and like hope and pray that Carter Ainsworth ends up as Noah Fant. Carter Nelson.
Yeah.
Sorry, Carter Ainsworth from Ainsworth. I'm going. Like ends up like Noah Fant.
He's on fire.
And I hope he does. I really do. Like, could you imagine if he went to Nebraska, became Noah Fant? Like, sick. I'll be wrong. Like, awesome. That's great. That's just all good for the state. But when I think about like other kids that are buried, other high school athletes that
wrong. When you say you'll be wrong, you're not saying anything.
The translation from 8-man to 11-man, like if it actually blossoms into something.
Because I thought you were asking more from a question. You don't have any definitive thoughts on his ability, right?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, he's an athlete.
Yeah.
And he's a pretty good one at that. But I think about I think about Jalen Lloyd and he's a state champion. A multi-state champion.
You probably, I bet it chafes his dad's hide a little bit, but I think he's used to it,
and that's cool. Like, but I don't want that to be a norm.
Yeah,
like I don't want the state to feel like, oh, because we hear that this recruiting profile had X person at 4 or 5 stars.
That's kind of the industry, though, which is.
And that's
I'm not
industry is
I'm not excusing it because believe me, it drives me absolutely crazy. Like I remember, and I think people that have been around me long enough know this. Just not guys where I coach either, because I was making the same case for Ducker when he came out of WS. I'm like, I keep hearing a lot about what he isn't. I do know what he is, and when you rush for that many yards and you understand the intricacies in that offense, and I know when we try to take away certain run fits from him, he was literally like the human eraser, right? So it's not just guy. It's also guy. I said the same thing about Zane Flores. I'm like, I'm just telling you guys, like, it's the best quarterback prospect that's ever come out of this state. I'm here for the discussion. He's prolific at what he does, and I've watched him do it a long time. So it's not just my guys, but believe me, it's the same way I feel about. It's the exact same way I feel about Anthony Rizak. Listen, he's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
At Elite 11,
doesn't get love.
At Elite 11 yesterday, he just lasered 4.6. Lasered 4.6. I watch.
And what was his 20 time again?
It's like 2.12.
Talk about explosive.
He's just, and he's bigger than his brother. He's bigger than Teddy. In the same vein, I just listened to Notre Dame was used to validate Carter Nelson.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of used to vindicate Teddy. Well, I think he was under time constraints or had, and I'm like,
interesting you bring that up.
So those are the things that bug me. When it's for and it's advantageous, it's used as
almost like when it's early, right?
I don't know what it is.
If you get to a guy early, it's almost like, oh, okay, so now we know the precedent, right? And everything's going to come along with it. If it's late,
I just know yesterday I'm probably venting. I was talking to Bell West quarterback coach and Huffman, and I'm probably venting to the wrong people, but there'll come a day. There will come a day where it'll just
where we'll understand things.
Where I just will be able to control myself.
And
listen, am I a guy that's keeps receipts? Absolutely. Like I've got about 20 years worth at the high school level. And I listen to people explain things away to me and validate it for a long, long time. And a lot of times it wasn't even for kids that I was coaching. Like I played against Harrison Phillips, right? Played against Easton Stick. It's like some of these guys, it's just like, what are we doing? Right. And I think the duality for me is I should be a state school guy because it went to that's where I went. But kids come first.
Kids always come first. Always.
For me, like the kids, and I'm not going to jeopardize.
I love the bond and relationship I get.
I'm
with
just
those
not
kids.
jeopardizing the integrity for, like, you got to have some hard conversations, right? It's not easy to have a conversation with Nebraska about Teddy. It wasn't. It's uncomfortable. It can be uncomfortable if both sides don't know where I'm at, right? Yep, I coach him specifically. Yep, it's the school that I coach at specifically. But what I'm not going to do is jeopardize the integrity of the relationship with him. Like I did the work on the front end. After that, it's not up to me. It's not, right? Didn't get Noah Fant, right? Tried. Hey, you want to sit down with Willie? One last shot. I know he's not returning your calls. After that, it's not on me. I'm for, like, I said the same thing with X. Watts. Well, at camp he only ran 4.7. I'm like, listen, you guys gonna get enough of that. you're gonna get enough of that. Like, at some point, you have to spend time actually just come watch. And see what you think.
Mm-hmm.
Use numbers or whatever it is that metrics, all things being equal. Does it validate? Does it vindicate? Like, but the lack of consistency, depending on what we're cheering for, is maddening. It's absolutely maddening.
Taking numbers to the next level.
That's a good question about Lloyd, though. I don't know why. I think it's because he's so raw. I mean, not that Malachi isn't, though. I don't know what it is.
When I look at a high school player, they're all raw.
Yeah.
Every last one of them until you get there. Even Cooper DeJean was raw coming out of OABCIG. Like that's 6 towns that came together to put a football team on the field. And yeah, he was the number one guy. He was the quarterback. He could do special things, and we'll continue to see that in the Big Ten. But he was still raw. He was an athlete. You didn't know if he was going to play DB. Well, yeah, you did when we found out when he got recruited by Iowa, was going to be a safety. But he could have done whatever he wanted to do. If he wanted to go play quarterback, he could have went to Morningside and just became a national champion. But taking numbers to the next level.
Who just got offered by Morningside? Somebody locally. It's a great. Central City, Aiden Zickman.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
I missed that.
Yeah. Anyway, that's
AZ.
Easy peasy. That's Mornings. Yeah, they win a lot. Kind of how I felt about Missouri State.
Tradition. Yeah. Real tradition.
We didn't get to much cleanup.
Oh, we cleaned up our thoughts from today.
I was bad.
Let's talk a little golf next, shall we? Why not?
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Seconds ago at the 15th.
The fairy tale story. Gets better.
I think I did it. Straight in the hole. No way.
DB, AR, DB, AR.
What's up?
I got a question. You know how we were talking about like soccer announcing versus hockey?
Yeah, the degree of difficulty.
And just because soccer's like slower.
Right.
And then you get to golf, right? Like, is there anyone ever that's going to top Jim Nantz? Ever.
It's pretty good.
And he said maybe 8 words there.
let it breathe. It's got to lay out.
Oh, man.
Those parabolic mics picked up the roar. They had it going.
Always do.
Yeah.
Always do. And people were bought in to block like they were following Tiger on a Sunday. Let's get to our guest, Josh Berhow, managing editor at golf.com, at Josh_Berhow on Twitter. Josh, good morning.
Morning, guys. How are you?
Good. Speaking of Tiger and the roar, is that the only time you think McElroy's going to play second fiddle to a golfer? Like, it doesn't happen often. He probably wasn't used to that one.
You know, here I was assuming we'd start with Brooks Koepka, but of course we're going to start with Michael Block. I mean,
absolutely.
You know, it was really my colleague James Colgan wrote a great story on golf.com about Rory's week, and just kind of how, you know, another major, another good effort for Rory, but not quite good enough. And it was funny how he said it was very fitting how, you know, on that when Block made that ace, it's like Rory kind of took a back seat. And when does Rory take a back seat to anyone, really?
Mm-hmm.
And he was kind of just like, you know, the secondary character when that happened. But like, I think Rory at that point, you know, he knew he wasn't going to win the tournament. I think he was happy to kind of be a part of a pretty special moment for Michael Block. And that was, you know, what a spectacular story.
I think Rory was cool with taking home his winnings. And
I was
watching Block get back in.
I was surprised he marked his ball.
Yeah.
Rory understood. Yeah. Josh, when you're taking a look at Koepka, I've even seen some titles, some editorials, certainly not with you guys because you're professionals, but it's weird. You get Live Golf's Koepka wins in some of these headlines. Yeah. Like how it's about time for us to grow up a little bit here, isn't it, Josh?
Yeah, I would assume I would like, I'm going to get on my high horse and say we didn't do that at golf.com.
Nope.
I would assume people probably do that because they know that, like, maybe Google picks it up for search, or maybe they know that if people, Liv's obviously very polarizing. Some people don't care, some people love it, some people hate it. And, it's a controversial word that might, help someone click on something. So, I think it's notable that this is Liv's first. This is the first major winner for someone who, is an active Liv player. Cam Smith won the British Open last year, but he wasn't at Liv then. But I mean, it's at the end of the day, like it's there's good golfers on both sides, right? Brooks Koepka, he's obviously showed us that we're not going to, we haven't seen the last of him for sure.
Josh, the alarming parts of certain players' games, John Rahm, for example, Tony Finau, we saw some of these guys really take a back seat this weekend, especially Rahm, after being one of the top favorites going into the event. A little bit of that comes after his win off the Masters, so I get it. But aside from that, did you notice anything with some of the top-end guys that just really didn't settle well with you?
I just think courses like this, it's just, you're not going to play. I don't think none of these guys are Tiger anymore, right? I mean, that was kind of a once in a lifetime talent where he's there every single week. So I think you're going to have some of those duds from some of these guys. And Rahm just got off to a bad start. Rahm actually played really well. He started with 76, but after that, I think he had 68 and then, 2 okay, but not good enough rounds the rest of the week, but just never could catch up after that 76. The tournaments like this, it's just, I thought the course did a really good job. It almost seemed like it was US Open-like, but not quite as tough. And those are the tournaments I really like. And that's when you're going to get the guys who are out there grinding, who are mentally tough. Brooks, I mean, it's a perfect Brooks Koepka tournament, obviously. Like in hindsight, I was kind of thinking, like, why would we ever pick against Brooks in a tournament like this? It's just perfectly set up for him. You look at all the other majors he won, and it's just that, kind of tough, gritty, long, tricky, gnarly, rough. It's not one for the fragile-minded. And he's always a guy who's just kind of sticking around. And it makes perfect sense that he was our winner this week because he's just, he's got such a strong. Well, I mean, look at this. This was his 5th major win. He's 4 for 5 in converting 54-hole leads or 4 co-leads at the majors. That's pretty remarkable. And the other major he won, Aaron Hill's 2017 U.S. Open, he was just one back after 54 holes. So he's the kind of guy who just kind of always plugs along, and he's never really going to get himself out of it. He's not, it's weird how he's not the type of guy where, almost like a Rory thing when Rory won a bunch of majors where he's not going to have one super low round and then kind of just coast off that the rest of the week. He's just always kind of right there, really steady, and doesn't play himself out of it. And I think when he's there at the end, people know his name at this point where they know that they got to go low because Brooks isn't going to make a ton of mistakes.
So bigger surprise to see of the second place guys with Hovland and Scheffler that Scheffler had the quietest 65 of the day. It seemed to fly under the radar. And I know Straka and a couple of other guys shot 65, but didn't seem like a 65, or that Hovland was in contention and never really got the consistency of the putter going. Like both were. Which one were you a little more taken aback by when you actually looked at the data?
I think I'm not surprised Scotty shot 65 yesterday.
Did it seem like a 65?
No, it was quiet. I mean, I think he birdied the last hole, which helped. But, I mean, Scotty shot 73 on Saturday. I think he was you guys might have to correct me if I'm wrong. The tournament's all a blur now. But I think he was our 54-hole leader or one off the lead or something like that.
One
he was
off.
Up there, right?
Yeah.
One off. Okay. And then he went I think he bogeyed 2 of his first 3 or something like that. And he just 73 on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Conditions weren't great. Conditions were very hard for everyone. But I don't think anyone expected Scotty Scheffler to shoot 73 on that day. And I also don't know how many people expected Brooks to shoot 66. I mean, I just talked about how he's such a mentally tough golfer, and that's the perfect course for him. The 66 is a really good score on that course on Saturday. And then Victor Hovland, he had some opportunities yesterday, but he just really didn't capitalize as much as he could have. I think on the whole was on 6th, Koepka went right, went in the hazard, ended up making a really good bogey there. Hovland still made par, but he had a shot from the middle of the fairway, could have put it on the green, put a ton of pressure on Brooks before he hit that, that would have been his third shot, and he went in the bunker, which he still made par from there, so he still picked up one shot on Brooks. But you never know. If he puts that on the green, puts it to 8 feet, Koepka sees that, maybe that gets in his head. Maybe Hovland makes birdie, maybe Koepka makes double bogey. I mean, there's just a lot of things like that can happen, but Victor's just never really capitalized as much as he should have.
The deja vu on 16, Connors hit the exact same shot.
Yeah, right. That was unreal.
That Hovland did, and you're thinking, is this Bizarro world?
Yeah, I wrote that story I wrote the Connors story for golf.com on Saturday, and when that happened Sunday, I'm like, if anyone wants to write that story, just literally copy and paste what I wrote. Exact same spot in the bunker, exact same spot in the lip. Key situation, obviously guys who are leading the tournament. Connors was leading at the time, or Hovland, who was right there in contention. And the same thing where they had the guys the rules official come over and try to figure it out and sort it all out. So yeah, what a bizarre situation, which honestly, bizarre situation in a very bizarre tournament. The things that we happened that week, like we had Jordan Spieth played a bunker shot out of bounds. We had guys tomahawk drivers. Yeah. I don't know if you guys saw Rahm lose it on a microphone around the green. But it's pretty, a very entertaining tournament, that's for sure.
Josh, I'll get you out of here on this. Hypothetically, say you were in this golf fantasy draft and say you won and the prize was breakfast. What are you ordering?
Oh, Lord. Here we go.
Okay, hold on. Say that again.
I said hypothetically.
He won a bet. Picking golfers. What, Josh, what are you having for breakfast to collect?
Oh, so like what's my go-to breakfast?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, well, that's easy. It's French toast.
All right. I'll take it.
Find the best French toast in your city in Omaha. There you go.
That's great. Thanks.
Josh. Thanks, man. We appreciate you. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Josh.
All right. Thank you, guys.
And fellas, if you feel any personal injury, you can maybe get $3 million in damages if you call Dyer Law, as they took the fight in front of a federal jury last week in Omaha. And you can trust this team at Dyer Law to help ensure that your rights are protected and you get the settlement you deserve. Call Dyer Law at 402-393-7529 or visit Dyer.law to chat with trusted professionals about your claim. That's Dyer.law.
Do I have to call them after losing that tournament to you?
Maybe. Or you can just wait and celebrate at the College World Series kickoff party, Shane, at Omaha Design Center, because this celebration it's the outdoor pre-party of the century. That's what I'm going to call it, just for you, Shane. So you can go there and check out the live DJ and yard games. Shane, you seem like a really good cornhole guy.
So at the place we were this weekend, the event center, the Mid-American
they have cornhole boards?
Yes. And it was like some national convention, man. It was deep.
It's a fun game.
For cornhole.
I love cornhole.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to reserve your kickoff party tickets for $20 a person, you can do so at omahaeventgroup.ticketlead.com. Remember, there's AC and bathrooms, and when you're down at the CWS, those are hard to find and hard to come by. So it's 2 blocks from the stadium, and that's the place to go to have a pre-party before the CWS. Thanks for joining us today. We'll be back.
Party.
Tomorrow.